It all started the moment I walked into my husband's family home. My name is Sarah, and I fell in love with Mark despite knowing that his mother, Mrs. Elizabeth Thompson, had never approved of any woman her son brought home. Little did I know, I was about to embark on a tumultuous journey filled with heartache and betrayal. The Thompson family residence was a grand, imposing mansion that exuded an air of opulence. As I approached the front door, nerves fluttered in my stomach. I clutched the bouquet of flowers tightly, hoping it would serve as a peace offering to Mrs. Thompson. Upon entering, I was greeted by a magnificent foyer adorned with exquisite artwork and elegant furniture. Mark's mother stood at the top of the grand staircase, her icy blue eyes fixated on me. Her disapproving gaze cast a shadow over me from the very beginning, and I could feel the weight of her judgment. "Welcome, Sarah," she said, her voice dripping with false warmth. "I hope you find our home to your liking." "Thank you, Mrs. Thompson," I replied, trying to mask my apprehension with a smile. "It's a beautiful house." "Oh, it's more than just a house, my dear," she said, her tone laced with condescension. "It's a symbol of our family's heritage, a legacy that must be upheld." I nodded politely, desperately trying to make a good impression despite the obvious tension in the air. Mark appeared beside me, his arms sliding around my waist, a feeble attempt to show his support. "Mom, Sarah, and I are really happy together," he said, his voice filled with sincerity. "I hope you can give her a chance." Mrs. Thompson's eyes narrowed, her lips curling into a disdainful smirk. "Mark, my dear, love is not enough to sustain a successful marriage. It takes more than mere infatuation to become a worthy member of this family." I could feel Mark's grip on my waist tighten, a silent indication of his inner conflict. But I refused to let Mrs. Thompson's words deter me. I had already fallen in love with Mark, and I was determined to prove myself worthy of his love and the Thompson family's acceptance. Little did I know that Mrs. Thompson's disapproval would manifest itself in countless ways, her actions slowly chipping away at my self-esteem. Her constant comparisons veiled insults, and passive-aggressive remarks created a toxic atmosphere that made me question my place in Mark's life. But I was not one to easily give up. I loved Mark with all my heart, and I believed that love had the power to conquer all obstacles. However, as time went on, I couldn't help but wonder if I would ever be able to bridge the gap between Mrs. Thompson's expectations and the woman I truly was. Little did I know that the coming New Year's dinner would become the breaking point, the catalyst for a series of events that would change my life forever. As the new year approached, Mrs. Thompson decided to organize a grand dinner for the entire family. It was supposed to be a joyous occasion, a chance for everyone to put their differences aside and enjoy each other's company. However, I knew deep down that tensions would only escalate. The dining room was a sight to behold, adorned with fine china, crystal glasses, and an extravagant centerpiece. The air crackled with anticipation as family members began to fill the seats around the long, polished table. Mark and I took our places, my heart pounding with a mixture of hope and anxiety. Mrs. Thompson sat at the head of the table, her presence commanding and formidable. Her gaze swept over the room, her eyes lingering on me with a mix of disdain and skepticism. I tried my best to maintain a calm composure, determined not to let her get to me. The dinner started with polite conversation, each family member sharing updates on their lives. However, it didn't take long for the facade of civility to crumble. A seemingly innocent remark about differing political views sparked a heated debate between two family members. The tension in the room thickened with each passing word. Mrs. Thompson, always the instigator, seized the opportunity to steer the conversation towards me. "And Sarah, have you ever considered that perhaps your opinions lack the depth and wisdom that comes with age and experience?" I took a deep breath, feeling my cheeks flush with a mixture of anger and humiliation. "Mrs. Thompson, I believe everyone's opinions should be respected, regardless of age or experience. We can learn from one another if we're open to it." Mark, sensing the mounting tension, attempted to diffuse the situation. "Mom, can we please focus on enjoying the evening? Let's not turn this into an argument." But Mrs. Thompson was relentless, her eyes narrowing with contempt. "Mark, it's clear to me that Sarah lacks the maturity to handle intellectual discussions. Maybe you should have chosen a woman who understands the importance of tradition and decorum." The room fell silent, the weight of Mrs. Thompson's words hanging in the air. I felt a surge of anger rise within me, fueling a courage I had never known before. I couldn't let her belittle me any longer. Standing up from my seat, I looked Mrs. Thompson in the eye, my voice steady and firm. I may not fit into your narrow definition of what a wife should be, Mrs. Thompson, but I refuse to be silenced or diminished. I am proud of who I am and the values I hold. If that is not enough for you, then perhaps it's time for me to reconsider my place in this family." Gasps echoed through the room as I turned and walked out, leaving behind a stunned and speechless family. As I made my way to the front door, a whirlwind of emotions washed over me: anger, sadness, and a newfound determination. Little did I know that my decision to leave that evening would mark the beginning of a journey towards reclaiming my self-worth and seeking the justice I so desperately deserve. In that moment, I felt something inside me snap. I had endured years of mistreatment, always hoping that things would get better. But now I realized that I couldn't continue living in a toxic environment where my worth was constantly questioned. With tears streaming down my face, I calmly replied, "All right." Without a second thought, I left the dinner table, leaving behind a stunned and silent family. As I walked out the door, a determination filled my heart. I would no longer allow myself to be treated as less than I deserved. Days turned into weeks, and the weight of my decision began to settle upon me. The absence of Mark's support, his unwillingness to stand up to his mother, only reinforced my conviction that I had made the right choice. It was time to reclaim my sense of self and build a life that honored my worth. One evening, as I sat in my new apartment surrounded by unpacked boxes, my phone buzzed with an incoming call. It was Mark, his voice tinged with regret and uncertainty. "Sarah, please. I didn't realize how much I relied on you until you left," he pleaded. "I can't bear the thought of losing you. Can we talk?" My heart wavered, memories of our love and the dreams we had shared flooding back. But I knew that going back to the way things were would only perpetuate the cycle of toxicity. I needed to stand my ground. "Mark, I love you, but love cannot thrive in an environment poisoned by your mother's disdain," I said, my voice firm yet filled with sadness. "If you truly want us to have a future together, we need to address the issues at hand." There was a heavy silence on the other end of the line, punctuated only by the sound of Mark's troubled breathing. Finally he spoke, his voice laced with a mix of frustration and resignation. "I don't know if things can change, Sarah," he confessed. "She's always been like this, and I don't know if she'll ever see reason." I took a deep breath, finding strength in my resolve. "Then, Mark, maybe it's time for us to find our own happiness apart. I refuse to spend my life begging for acceptance from someone who will never truly see me." As the words left my mouth, a sense of liberation washed over me. I was no longer defined by the chains of an unhealthy relationship. I was taking control of my own destiny, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. With each passing day, my determination grew stronger. I immersed myself in self-reflection and self-care, seeking healing from the wounds inflicted by Mrs. Thompson and the pain of a love that couldn't conquer all. I realized that true happiness could only be found by embracing my own worth, free from the toxic influence that had overshadowed my life for far too long. Little did I know that this breaking point would mark the beginning of a transformative journey, one that would lead me towards an unexpected path of revenge, where I would find the strength to fight for justice and emerge stronger than ever before. Days turned into weeks, and the anger inside me transformed into a steely resolve. I decided to fight back, not just for myself, but for every moment I had been belittled and disrespected. I filed a lawsuit against my own family, seeking justice and retribution for the years of emotional abuse I had endured. As I sat in the lawyer's office, poring over the details of the case, a fire burned within me. It was no longer just about seeking financial compensation. It was about exposing the truth, unearthing the darkness that lurked beneath the facade of a picture-perfect family. My lawyer, Mr. Anderson, looked at me with a mix of concern and determination. "Sarah, this won't be an easy battle. They have power, influence, and a network of loyal allies. But if you're willing to push forward, I'll be by your side every step of the way." I nodded, my voice filled with determination. "I'm ready, Mr. Anderson. I won't let them silence me any longer. It's time to shed light on the years of emotional abuse I endured at their hands." The legal proceedings were grueling, but I stood my ground, armed with evidence and a fire in my heart. Witness testimonies painted a damning picture of Mrs. Thompson's manipulation and control, highlighting the toxic environment she had created within the family. Amidst the courtroom battles, the divorce followed suit. It was a painful decision, but I knew that my marriage had become a mere extension of Mrs. Thompson's control over my life. With each step forward, I took control of my own destiny, refusing to let anyone hold power over me. One evening, as I sat in my lawyer's office, going over the latest developments in the case, a sense of satisfaction washed over me. The evidence was mounting, and the truth was being exposed for all to see. It was time to take a bold step towards retribution. "Mr. Anderson, I have an idea," I said, my voice filled with a mix of determination and a touch of mischief. "I want to go after their fortune. I want to hit them where it hurts the most." Mr. Anderson raised an eyebrow, intrigued by my proposition. "Sarah, going after their fortune will be an uphill battle. We need to ensure we have a strong case, a solid legal foundation to support our claims." I smile, a glimmer of satisfaction in my eyes. "Don't worry, Mr. Anderson. I have gathered every piece of evidence, every financial discrepancy, every hidden account. They won't know what hit them." And so my revenge plan took shape. With meticulous preparation and an unyielding determination, we built a case that exposed the Thompson family's financial misdeeds. It was a journey filled with late nights, countless meetings, and the unwavering support of my legal team. The courtroom became the stage where my struggle for justice reached its climax. The judge saw through the facade of a loving family and recognized the deep scars I carried within me. As the gavel fell, my victory was pronounced. I was awarded half of the fortune that I had once believed was out of my reach. But the judge's final blow hit Mrs. Thompson the hardest. With a stern voice, the judge addressed her. "In addition to the financial compensation, Mrs. Thompson, you are hereby ordered to pay a $50,000 fine for the moral damages you have inflicted upon the plaintiff." I could see the shock and disbelief on Mrs. Thompson's face as the weight of her actions finally caught up with her. It was a moment of sweet satisfaction, knowing that justice had been served and that I had successfully turned the tables on the woman who had tormented me for so long. As I left the courtroom that day, a sense of closure washed over me. Revenge had been achieved, but more importantly, I had regained my dignity and self-worth. The journey was far from easy, but it had transformed me into a woman who would never again allow herself to be silenced or diminished. Little did I know that this was only the beginning of a new chapter in my life, one where I would rise above pain and bitterness, embracing a future filled with resilience, self-love, and the freedom to be unapologetically myself. The courtroom victory had been a turning point in my life. With the weight of Mrs. Thompson's abuses lifted from my shoulders, I could finally breathe freely. I had achieved the revenge I sought, but more importantly, I had found the strength to reclaim my identity and rebuild my life on my own terms. In the aftermath of the legal battle, the news of the court's decision spread like wildfire. The Thompson family's once immaculate reputation was tarnished, their dark secrets brought into the glaring light of truth. People started questioning the image they had projected for so long, and the whispers of their deceit echoed through social circles. One afternoon, as I sat in a cafe, sipping my coffee, a familiar voice broke through the surrounding chatter. It was Mark, standing just a few feet away, his gaze locked on mine. His eyes held a mixture of regret, longing, and a touch of humility. "Sarah, can we please talk?" he pleaded, his voice filled with genuine remorse. I studied him for a moment, contemplating the years of pain he had caused me. But I saw a glimmer of change in his eyes, a spark of introspection that made me pause. Reluctantly, I motioned for him to join me. As he sat across from me, the air between us heavy with unspoken words, I broke the silence. "Mark, I never wanted things to end this way," I began, my voice laced with a tinge of sadness. "But the toxicity in our relationship and your loyalty to your mother made it impossible for me to stay." He lowered his gaze, his hands fidgeting nervously. "I know, Sarah. I allowed her control over our lives, and I deeply regret the pain I caused you. I've come to realize that my mother's approval should never have been a prerequisite for our happiness." I sighed, the memories of our love and the dreams we once shared flooding back. "Mark, it's too late for us. We've both grown and changed in ways that cannot be reconciled. I need to move forward, and I hope you find the strength to do the same." Tears welled up in his eyes, and he reached across the table, grasping my hand. "Sarah, please believe me when I say that I am truly sorry for everything. I hope you find the happiness and peace you deserve." As I looked into his eyes, I could see the sincerity in his words. A pang of bittersweet nostalgia washed over me, but I knew that closure was necessary for us to heal and move forward separately. With a gentle squeeze of his hand, I nodded. "Thank you, Mark. I appreciate your apology, and I wish you all the best." And with that, we parted ways, our paths diverging once and for all. It was a moment of closure, a final chapter in the story of a relationship that had been marred by the shadow of Mrs. Thompson's influence. In the months that followed, I focused on rebuilding my life. The financial compensation I had received allowed me to start anew, pursuing my passions and embracing the freedom I had longed for. I surrounded myself with friends who uplifted me, seeking solace in their unwavering support. But the true triumph came from within as I found the strength to forgive, not for the sake of those who had wronged me, but for my own peace of mind. I let go of the bitterness that had consumed me and embraced a future filled with self-love and personal growth. As time passed, the wounds began to heal, leaving behind scars that served as a reminder of my resilience. I emerged from the darkness stronger, wiser, and ready to face whatever challenges life had in store. The journey was not without its difficulties, but I discovered that true triumph lies not in seeking revenge, but in finding the courage to rise above the pain and create a life filled with happiness and authenticity. And so, with my head held high and a heart filled with newfound strength, I stepped into the next chapter of my life, a chapter defined by triumph closure and the unwavering belief that I deserved nothing less than the happiness I had fought so fiercely to reclaim.